Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and I'm here with Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins as we give you the first of our two updates this week for the Westchester coronavirus pandemic. We are now past the one-year mark, and we're entering now our 13th month of dealing with the pandemic. And our purpose today is to give you an idea of where we are with the pandemic, give you some updates and some of the policy issues that are there. And since we have the presence with you, we're going to give you a little bit of information about a few other things before we part company. We'll be back again on Thursday at 2 o'clock for the second update of the week as we close out the week. And hopefully the numbers will continue to be good. Our numbers come from the New York State Department of Health tracker. You can find that on the New York State Department of Health website. We have a website for Westchester County where we take some of those numbers and we break them down by municipalities in terms of cases, active cases and total cases. The New York State tracker gives us details that we do not normally have, so we take the information from the state and we share it with you on hospitalizations and fatalities, which unfortunately is not given to us municipality by municipality. But the numbers as we have it for Sunday, March 7th, we have currently 5,930 active cases of coronavirus, those that have been tested positive in the last 2 weeks that have not cleared the 2-week protocol. That number is the lowest number of active cases we've had since November 30th. That means prior to the Christmas and New Year's Eve spikes that increased the number of cases. We're very encouraged by that number. There's nothing to particularly be happy about because we still have lots of folks who are in harm's way with these many active cases. But it is a good sign that in our peak in the month of January, we were at 11,500 cases, and now we're down under 6,000 cases at 5,930. However, we saw a flattening over the last week. A week ago, Sunday, we had 5,976 cases. That's only 46 cases less this week than last week. It's less, but it's a very small amount, and we oscillated during the week. We went up a little bit, we went down a little bit. So I think it's fair to say after 5 consecutive weeks of dropping in the number of active cases, we've now had a flat week, and so we're going to determine what happens this week and next week to determine is there a trend line here? Do we continue to resume to drop, or do we flatten off, or for any reason do we start to rise? And all of those things, we'll try to understand what that means for us and what it means for the society as we try to get back to some version of normal as we go through the vaccination situation. There's very good news on the hospitalization front. The last number that we had was as of Saturday, 270 people hospitalized for coronavirus. We were at a peak a few weeks ago of 588, so we have dropped 50% drop in the number of people hospitalized down to 270. That is a very encouraging number. During the summer of last year, after we had the first major wave, we were down to 25, 30 people hospitalized. So at 270, it's still a significant number, but it is not a number anywhere as near as large as it was more recently. A week before that, we had 340, so that's a drop of 70 within a week. 2 weeks before that, 389, and that's a drop of over 100-plus cases, or a 25% drop in hospitalizations just in the last 2 weeks. And when you look at the total number of active cases, that gives you an idea of the breadth of the infection. When you look at hospitalizations, that's sort of the depth of the infection, the people who are infected who are most severely impacted. So there's always going to be a smaller number of people hospitalized out of the total people that are infected, and we're very encouraged that that number as a percentage continues to drop as much as is possible in terms of absolute numbers. For fatalities, through yesterday, 2,125 people have died from coronavirus. Every death is a tragedy. We do not treat it as a statistic, but we do try to look for trends to try to determine, because you can be hospitalized but still recover and go home, or unfortunately you might suffer the greatest loss, which is the loss of your life. Over the last week, we have had a total of 28 fatalities to coronavirus, and that is the smallest weekly total that we've had in quite a while. The week prior to that, we had 43 cases, and the week prior to that, similar numbers in the 40s and 50s. So we're encouraged if the number gets lower and lower in fatalities. In fact, the last couple of nights, we had 3 the night before, 4, 2. Those numbers are much lower than what we were having consistently in the upper single digits and low double digits. So we'll hope that what we're seeing in terms of the infection numbers continue to be positive, and each day will tell us a new tale, and we try to link them together in weekly intervals so we have some sense of a trend line that's happening. But to summarize, number of active cases under 6,000, relatively flat the last week, but continued to drop just a little bit. Significant drop in the number of people hospitalized down to 270, and the number of fatalities, while the number increases, the number that are dying each week has dropped, and we hope that's a good sign going forward. On the other side of the coin, because now there is another side to the coin where previously there was only the infection numbers, there's now the vaccination numbers. And right now we're tracking basically what has been historically the two largest combinations of vaccinations. The county center, which has been open over 2 months now and can accommodate almost 2,000 people a day, and the two county clinics, one here in White Plains, one at the campus of the community college, which together represent the three largest areas. Now, we hope by Thursday we'll be reporting numbers that come out of the Yonkers facility that was just opened. That is a significant vaccination station as well. We're hopeful that that will become the second county center in terms of its volumes, and we're going to talk about some of the other things that we're doing in pop-ups that now we're generating with some of the doses that we're getting. The county center has, through yesterday, March 7th, issued 91,815 vaccinations. That includes both first and second shots. 91,815 vaccinations, and our two clinics together, 17,981, for a total of over 109,000, approaching 110,000 vaccinations given. You can't correlate vaccinations to individuals because they include second shots, so the number of individuals are somewhat less than that. But the bottom line is that we're making surprisingly good progress given where we were. You must remember on January 1st, we had nobody vaccinated. And here we are slightly 2 months later, and we have 110,000 vaccinations that have been authorized. So by Thursday, hopefully we'll have numbers for you that include the Yonkers numbers. You'll see that jump up. Now, these are not the only places where people are being vaccinated. Local pharmacies have been given an allocation by the state government and now by the federal government. There are some state-sponsored pop-up vaccination locations. We've talked about these in prior updates. They've been in a host of different jurisdictions around the county. And now we're doing some pop-ups of our own to try to offset, some of the geographical gaps that we've had in our system. We have now major centers in White Plains, Greenberg, and in Yonkers, but we don't have sufficient in other parts of the county, so we're trying to compensate for that in the way that we use some of the additional allocation. And we're very encouraged now with the Johnson & Johnson product legal and available to us. That will help us with one-shot vaccinations. It'll certainly help us with any homebound people that we have to give vaccines to, so we go there once and not have to come back again 3 to 4 weeks later. And it'll just make it more efficient for us to cover more people with vaccinations. So want to cover on a couple of policy points that tie into COVID. We have sent a letter to New York State today, and we've sort of outlined on a couple of key policy areas. I'm going to be instructing our County Department of Health to change our policies regarding enforcing quarantine status for those who have already been vaccinated. The governor made some comments at one of his updates. We watched those updates to try to understand the thinking from the governor and the people around him. And with that, we're going to now say that those who are fully vaccinated will not require quarantine status if they're exposed to a COVID-positive individual or if they've traveled outside of New York State within the United States and have now returned home. Now, that quarantine process was in place so that if you were exposed to COVID, even though you were double vaccinated, or if you were coming from some other location in the United States outside of the states contiguous to us, so Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Vermont, Pennsylvania, are contiguous to New York State, those would be exempted. But any place else, if you went to Maryland or if you went to Rhode Island, they are not contiguous states. And then, of course, if California, Florida, Texas, you name it, North Dakota, South Dakota, any of those states, you would have to quarantine when you came back, even if you had been vaccinated. And we're going to have our county health department not require quarantining. Some of that comes from CDC guidelines that have come out. But also, more importantly, the governor has sort of said this directly in some of his updates. So we've been waiting for the backup to come down through one of the various state agencies, but it's really caused a problem for a lot of people. It's caused a problem is trying to open our schools. When a school personnel has traveled in any length, I have relatives in Northern Virginia, and if you go down to Virginia and come back, in theory, you're supposed to quarantine for 14 days, even if you've been double vaccinated. So we're going to enforce the rules as the governor had stated it, as the way the CDC has it, and we've informed the state officials this is what our plan is to do. Obviously, they have authority over us, so if they decide that they want to curtail that, they can do that, but we haven't seen any state policies that have followed. So we don't want to wait. This is an impact to people's lives, and we want to try to make it as realistic as possible for people to resume normal functioning in the society, which will help us move forward and get out of the situation. We've received 1,000 Johnson & Johnson doses for shots here in Westchester, targeted for seniors. The Johnson & Johnson, which is Janssen Pharmaceuticals, their COVID vaccine was approved. It's approximately 85% effective in preventing severe or critical COVID-19, which occurs at least 28 days after vaccination. So it's a one-shot dosage, and it has 85% efficacy. And many people are concerned about 85%, 95%. Right now, if you're not vaccinated, you have zero protection. And so we think substantial protection goes a long way in helping people be able to function, and even with masks and even with social distancing and hand sanitizing and the things that we're advised to do. So some of these shots are being given out today in New Rochelle through the New Rochelle Housing Authority. We have some plans to do similar activity in northern Westchester, linking some of the communities like Cortland and Yorktown and Somers. So far, where the pop-ups have come from the state, they've been in Peekskill, they've been in Yonkers, they've been in Port Chester, we've seen them in Mount Kisco, a couple of other locations, but New Rochelle has not had that presence yet, nor has that central part of northern Westchester. So the 1,000 units that we have targeted for seniors, with the Johnson & Johnson product, that's what we're doing. And it's easier to work with the Johnson & Johnson product with a pop-up in the same way that it's easier to work in a homebound because it's a one shot. And that one shot, a person comes, you don't have to say, we have to come back in 3 to 4 weeks. Ken and I both have been to some of the pop-ups, and we've gone back to the second round of it. And it's a lot of work to set up one of these things, and it's important to give proper protection. If the Pfizer or the Moderna virus requires 2 shots, you got to get 2 shots. You can't bail out after 1. But if J&J is considered effective at 1 shot, and we can do the 1 shots and get more seniors done, that's what's appropriate. We have to get to the point where we can open this beyond seniors to the full population. And the seniors are more vulnerable, the people with underlying health issues, and those who are out there in essential services are in critical positions. And we've got to get this cohort vaccinated so that the state, they'll make the decision, can open it up to a larger group of people to get vaccinated. We're told by President Biden that he feels confident. I think he moved it up from late May to mid-May. I hope that's correct. But whatever it is, if in the next 90 days we can reach the point where everybody who wants a vaccine can get a vaccine, then we're going to have a high percentage of our people, not just in Westchester, but nationwide, vaccinated. And then there's a greater confidence in the way we have our summer activities and our fall activities. We are planning to open Playland this year, which we did not last year. We're planning to have some certain events that we didn't have last year, on the belief that we will have a higher percentage of people vaccinated. If you have the vaccine and you thereby do not get the infection, then the number of active cases should be dropping. And that combination of activities hopefully will give us that sense that we're getting closer and closer to the end of the tunnel, which we all hope this summer, no later than the fall, we'll see. But we'll see how it goes. I'm going to ask Ken Jenkins to come in and talk about the next round of some updated issues, which will cover paratransit and so forth. Ken.
Thanks, George. Certainly, the county executive has authorized some additional things to be done from the county resources. One of those is for paratransit. For our residents that require getting the vaccine appointments, Westchester County is going to offer paratransit to senior and disabled constituents who are not currently registered in the paratransit system. The service is going to be free for the vaccinations. To make a reservation, you have to set up your vaccination appointment, and then you can call 995-7272 and extension 1, and that will allow you to create a paratransit appointment. We're also putting up Evan Latimer's information, and you can email as well. But once again, 995-7272. Again, most of the times you have to be registered for the paratransit system to be able to be picked up by that service, but it's for senior and disabled constituents that are not already registered in paratransit to be able to get to those vaccination appointments, to the new pop-ups the county executive just mentioned, and to whatever sites that there are inside of Westchester County. Just want to put that little asterisk on. If you had an appointment somewhere out of Westchester County, that would not be eligible for paratransit service, but inside of Westchester to get to a vaccination appointment of seniors and disabled. We still continue to have all of the distribution methodology that's there right now. So if you go to our webpage, westchestergov.com, you will be able to link across to the state site, the MI Eligible website. You'll be able to see the locations. You'll see the distributions as we are told what those distributions are. You'll be able to make appointments for different things, but it's always pointing to the state website. Remember, we're still in phase 1A and 1B. Those folks that are eligible for those particular categories are listed on the website, the MI Eligible COVID-19 vaccine.health.newyork.gov. You certainly can check your eligibility there. The state COVID-19 vaccination hotline is still open as well. Pack your patience with that. There's millions of people trying to call on the line. So 1-833-NYS-4VAX. The real number is 1-833-697-4829. Make sure that you have that opportunity as well. In the vaccination site in Yonkers at the state FEMA site, that actually has a component that has been part of all of the mass vaccination sites that FEMA and New York State have set up. It's not at every site, but at that particular site, you actually can walk in to try to set up an appointment, not to get a vaccine, but to walk in to schedule an appointment. Remember, you always need an appointment to get vaccinated, no matter the site. In addition to that, you'll see on the website the forms, the COVID-19 vaccination form. If you don't do it before you go into your appointment, they will make sure that you do it at the time of your appointment. We'll see the county executive signing his a little bit later on today. For more information about phase distribution and more, certainly you can go to the New York State website. It's right at the top of their website. Click on it, and you can get that valuable information about how vaccines are being distributed, the locations that they're distributed at, how to get an appointment, and you don't have to go to Potsdam or Plattsburgh, even though, as the county executive said, they're really nice places.
Thanks very much, Ken. So I finally got my first COVID shot on Friday. It was a Moderna virus and shot and a Moderna vaccine, and I received it at the Westchester County Center. Being age eligible, I could have gotten the shot earlier in the process, but I kind of thought it was the better strategy is to try to get as many of our Westchester residents through, particularly once comorbidity became eligible, that people would have a better chance of the shot. So I didn't feel the need to jump line. So I did take a shot last Friday, and unfortunately we have a video of it. I've seen firsthand from the very beginning of the pandemic what the tragedy of the pandemic can be and the frustration of it. And so we have a way out of this, and it's through the vaccination process. Okay?
We'll get you all set.
Very good. Am I going where? There? Is this Moderna or Pfizer?
Moderna.
Okay.
So it will be Moderna, so in 28 days you will need your second dose.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Dr. Emler.
After I give you your vaccine, you're going to be in observation for 15 minutes. If you
Okay.
have any difficulty, you let the staff know.
I feel fine.
Not nervous?
Of course I'm nervous, but, you know,
I'll take the
nothing that I can't handle.
You're all done.
Wow, that's fast.
Yep.
Very good. Good job, Maureen.
thank
It
you.
didn't hurt at all. It was a little pinch, but no problem. It's cost us 2,100 lives, and those human beings that are gone and not coming back, this helps us from not being the next statistic. And so therefore it makes perfectly good sense to vaccinate yourself as well as to get everybody vaccinated. I want to thank the men and women of the Westchester County Health Department, and particularly under the leadership of Dr. Charlena Amler, for getting me my first shot. I'm just one of those, thousands, 110,000 people that have gotten their vaccines. I also want to point out that they did not give me the haircut. I went and did that separately over the course of the weekend. Long overdue if you saw how I looked on Friday and now how I look today. I was doing my best to bring back the 1970s. But the bottom line is that the shot that I received, I did not have any long-term ill effects. A little pain at the source of the injection for a little while. A number of hours, but that went away pretty easily. I did not lose any use of my arm. And so any of you who haven't taken a shot yet, I know there's a fear factor. And once you take the first shot, then you get on the internet and people will get you all scared about what the second shot will be like. But the bottom line is I know this protects my health as it protects the health of everybody else who gets the vaccine, and it's really a very small price to pay for that sense of protection. I've talked to individuals who have now been vaccinated, and they've said very simply they have a greater sense of confidence. They have less anxiety knowing that they've received something that can protect them from this disease. And I think the more that grows in the society, the more this gets opened up to more people, the more they get the vaccine, the less fear that we have over what's happening with COVID. Another issue of public policy related to COVID, Westchester County's Health Department has issued guidance on the New York State requirements for spectators at school and recreational sports. You may recall that about a month or so ago, there's a big question about beginning high-risk sports, which were sports like football, basketball, ice hockey, wrestling, a few other ones, that were deemed by the New York State Department of Health to potentially be a COVID spread issue in ways that low-risk sports, things like swimming and tennis and so forth, would not be. And they made that decision, the governor made the decision a little over a month ago to let the county health departments and the county governments make the decision on starting high school sports one way or the other. And so we took about, the better part of a week. We announced that we were authorizing it. We had to get some protocols down. And in real time, certain parents were upset. I want my kid to play, or the kids wanted to play. But we got it worked out, and high-risk sports are now underway. And in fact, last Thursday, I had the pleasure to be at the gym in Rye, my hometown, with Dr. Eric Byrne, who's the superintendent of Rye schools. And we sat and we watched the Rye girls basketball team and the Rye boys varsity team play basketball, part of each game. And you could see that it was a great recreation, as it has been, always, to have high school sports. Good for the students to be athletes, and it also is an opportunity for them in the future. Perhaps they can go on to play in college and have some benefit from it. However, the decision on spectators is that we were dealing with a sort of rigid strategy that said only 2 spectators at all. And now when you see basically empty stands, they had little cardboard cutouts, as you've seen in some of the professional sports, to just try to give the athletes a sense that there's somebody out there watching. And these are cardboard cutouts of real people, real parents and students and so forth, that you could socially distance effectively a larger number of people in the stands, both at home and away. And so we authorized as given the authority to authorize it from a public health standpoint, the 2 spectator per athlete standard rather than the 2 total. And generally, if it's 2 parents or a parent and a sibling that comes to watch, a student athlete play, they don't have to socially distance because they're part of the same nuclear family, and it can be handled given the amount of size and space. However, Section 1, which is the athletic conference that exists for Westchester County Public Schools, along with some other ones in the Hudson Valley, have not authorized that issue. So for those folks who are wondering how come we don't have more spectators at the sport, we have given clearance to it, but it is up to Section 1 to change that protocol. Now, winter sports are primarily indoor sports. When we go to either fall or spring sports, which the spring is usually yet ahead of us anyway, and the fall program that was canceled, now they're going to try to squeeze in a football season and all of that. Both fall and spring sports are outdoors. So the concern is much less when you go outdoors. The county health department doesn't have those concerns. Section 1 does. They will make whatever decisions they can. They are the governing authority for the high school sports programs, and hopefully they'll make the decision. But for parents who are anxious about that issue, we at the county have done our job. We think we're consistent with what good health procedures are, and now it's up to the Section 1 athletics in that particular issue. Some people will come to me and they say, George, the school isn't open, but they can play high school sports. How do you justify that? It's a question of what the state decides to give the counties to decide upon. The state specifically gave us the authority to make the decision on whether or not high-risk sports could be played. The state has not given the county the authority to open school districts. Our challenge is to work with school districts with the local power that they have to decide to open and under what set of circumstances. And if you go back to the original statement of the governor, he said that the school districts have to consult with parents, teachers, and the local health department. So we've made the local health department not a decision maker, but rather an enabler. If the school district says we want to open, and now how do we do that? Then our health department personnel comes in and we look at the physical logistics of the classrooms and the structure and what can we do. Are there barriers? Are there not barriers? Can it be done a certain way? How would you restructure it? Where would you hold the classes? And that's different for every school. You know, the newer the building, the more spacious the classrooms, the more easier it is to do that. The harder it is, the older the school. And I went to a very old elementary school, which is no longer standing. It's been replaced by a newer version of it. And I recognize that it is difficult in every district. But just understand that the state has made the decisions from the very beginning to the very present on most of these issues. They determine the testing. They determine vaccine sites. They determine the data. That power resides in the governor of each state, each of the 50 states. And there are 50 states with slight variations. You watch what's going on in Connecticut, watch what's going on in New Jersey, you see differences. You have relatives in Florida, they're very different. You have relatives in California, they're very different. There's 50 shades of gray here, all different kinds of permutations as to what each state is going to authorize. Our job as a county government is to act when we're given the authority, and we act quickly. We are not slow off the mark. We work closely with the school districts, closely with the municipal governments, in cooperation. We talk with them. We're going on a conference call when this is over with the local municipal officials, as we do every week. We have one the first hour of the week and Monday morning with school officials, and then we interact throughout the course of time to try to stay close on these different issues. But in every one of these cases, the state determines whether or not local authorities get to make the decisions. Whenever they authorize the county to do it, we'll make decisions. We'll make what we hope are sound decisions, and we'll make them quickly. Beyond that, there are some guidelines now that have opened up by the state for catered events. Catering halls and similar type facilities had been closed for the longest period of time. Now the state has set some rules that authorizes their opening, and you can have up to a certain number of people participating in these kind of catered events. And so in order to try to get some information out, our county health department will sponsor a webinar to go over how we resume in-person events safely. This is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. It'll be moderated by our Westchester Tourism and Film Group. Natasha Caputo is the director of that department. You can reach her at ncaputo, C-A-P-U-T-O, at visitwestchesterny.com. Call her at 995-8502. She'll get you the information if you're so interested in observing the webinar, and it will walk through the different guidance that the state has created, the requirements, and then how the county works in to allow for in-person catered events. If you have a major event coming up this year, you have an annual dinner dance for a not-for-profit organization or religious institution, you have a big birthday party for somebody who's going to hit one of those magic numbers, and you want to have a large group gathering for birthdays, for weddings, for any similar type things, religious services where you're honoring someone. All of those things will fall under these regulations, and tomorrow's webinar should help. And if you have any questions, again, you can call Natasha Caputo at 995-8502, and she's happy to get some of that information. We're going to talk a little bit about our economic development program, and with that, I'm going to ask Bridget Gibbons, who is our Director of Economic Development, to join me on camera, and we're going to tap into some of her expertise. Bridget, thank you for joining us. We have an effort made to expand our economic development program to include certain different desks, industry desks, which are targeting industries that we see as growth industries. And I'm going to have Bridget walk you through a little bit of that. This effort would be necessary if there was no COVID, but because there is COVID, it becomes a more urgent task for us to try to work with our business community in a positive way. We have done that with grants from the Coronavirus CARES Act money that we have last year. We hope this year we'll be able to do that again and provide some financial assistance to small businesses. But this really goes beyond this. This is not about COVID as much as it is about trying to grow our economic program by helping to invest in certain categories of businesses that have a benefit if they cluster in a particular area. And we think that being next to New York City, but different from New York City, gives us that competitive advantage. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Bridget to just run through some of these things as part of the strategy on economic development. Bridget.
Thank you, County Executive. Today we are happy to announce that we're executing on a sector-based economic development strategy We're going to be focusing over the course of 2021 on 4 key sectors: biosciences, advanced manufacturing, fintech, and clean energy. And today we're announcing the first step in that strategy, which is the establishment of the industry desks. So we are establishing an industry desk to assist the businesses that are here in these key sectors, and also to attract businesses here to Westchester County from outside the area to make the county welcoming to businesses in those sectors. We chose these sectors for 3 main reasons. They offer well-paying jobs. They align very well with the existing workforce here in Westchester County. We have a highly educated workforce, and they are resilient. In fact, many of the businesses in these key sectors have been involved in the response to the pandemic. For example, Regeneron, who we all know is located here in Westchester County, has been in the news for its development of its treatment for COVID-19. So we're very proud of that initiative. The industry desk will be staffed by the Office of Economic Development and supported by a dedicated task force. So we know we don't know everything about all of these sectors, so we're bringing in a team of experienced experts in each of these sectors, so businesses, business organizations, workforce development experts, et cetera, to really help us focus on these sectors and what their needs are. We really are going to be focusing on workforce development, real estate, regulatory, financing, and more. So the first 2 industry desks that we're going to be launching today are biosciences and advanced manufacturing. A little bit about the biosciences sector in Westchester County. We are home to the largest biosciences cluster in New York State. Many people don't know that. We have 8,000 jobs, or 20% of the state's total biosciences employment, in the 5th largest biosciences cluster in the country. Biosciences industry in Westchester County has grown exponentially over the last few years, and we're proud that industry leaders and startups are calling Westchester County home. The Biosciences Task Force is chaired by Deborah Novick, who is the county's Director for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I want to thank her for her hard work. And we have representatives from several businesses and others that are in that sector: White Plains Hospital, RMC Bio1, Robert Martin Company, Sapiens Therapeutics, and business organizations and other experts. The other industry desk we're announcing today is the Advanced Manufacturing Desk. Westchester County is home to a diverse advanced manufacturing industry that produces everything from packaging inspection equipment and plastic fluid handling products to circuit boards and aluminum parts. The Advanced Manufacturing Industry Desk and Task Force are focused primarily on workforce development issues. We had 1 meeting already and identified several key positions that these businesses are unable to fill. So we are rolling up our sleeves and we're getting to work to come up with creative solutions to help these businesses fill those positions so they can grow. Current members of the Advanced Manufacturing Task Force include representatives from Magnetic Analysis Corporation, Metcar, Bantam Tools, Micromold Products, Packaging Technology and Inspection, as well as the business organizations and other experts. We're going to be adding additional businesses in that sector to that task force. I want to thank the county executive for his support in this sector-based approach. We're optimistic that 2021 will be a transformative year from an economic development perspective. And next up is our fintech industry desk, which we'll be announcing probably in mid-April, and then our clean energy desk in May. To learn more, you can go to westchestercatalyst.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Make a couple of general comments on the economic development that has been highlighted. By the way, fintech is short term for financial technology, just so folks know the internal stuff. The initiatives that Bridget is announcing really amplifies what has been happening for a number of years here in the county. And I think it's important to understand that what we hope to accomplish will not be done within a year or perhaps the lifetime of this administration. That this is an effort that will go well on beyond this, and it may be that the greatest successes will happen when other people hold the position that I hold. The ribbons will get cut by other people. I don't have a problem with that because I recognize that it takes time to develop things and to create the kind of clusters that really grow the way we want. But we want to have a long vision. We want to play the long game. It's not about Westchester this year, for next year. It's about Westchester over the long haul. When I grew up in this county, and I wasn't, mindful of it because I was a little kid, going to elementary school and playing ball and so forth, the great economic expansion of this county came when the officials and the developers of that era were able to attract major New York corporations to come out of the city and headquarter themselves out in the suburbs. We here in Westchester County have some of the corporations that we still hold today, IBM, PepsiCo. Back in the day, we had General Foods and we had Nestle and we had a number of other Texaco and other major companies that were here. Now some of those companies have been replaced by other ones. We have Danone North America, Dannon Yogurt if you need to know the product line, or Evian Water. We have Heineken USA based here in Westchester County, and most people know the Heineken product, along with Regeneron as a homegrown entity, and MasterCard International is based here as well. But the concept of economic development in those days, in the 60s into the 70s, was big is better. And you could attract, given the climate, you could attract those companies to come here. And by the way, we weren't the only ones. Fairfield County attracted a fair number of corporations. Northern New Jersey, parts of Long Island did as well, as people had their corporations out of the city for a variety of reasons. We're in a different world now. Small is the new big. And what Bridget is basically highlighting is that we understand that change in the business community, and we're trying to reflect that by dealing with startups through programs like Element 46, which is an incubator program that was a complete innovation thought up by Bridget and her colleagues in economic development, and then also by spotlighting these industry sectors and coming up with those specific set of incentives that work for those industries. There is a misbelief out there in the world for those people that don't look closely at these things. And the misbelief is that it is simply a matter of tax policy that will drive the decision of business. If you lower your taxes, businesses will come automatically. Now, that may be true for certain businesses, and that may be true for particular individual businesses that decide to stay, and they negotiate with the state or someone certain incentive packages to stay. There's a host of other things: the cost of energy, access to markets, the nature of the workforce. Is the workforce appropriate for what your product is? If you have a high level of service or product that requires a well-educated workforce, you will more likely find it where you have a higher percentage of educated people in the general population. If you're doing a different kind of work, then a different kind of location might make sense to you. But it is not simply cut taxes and all of a sudden businesses will flourish. I came out of an industry where location, and location, real estate-based industry, was considered the mantra for what made success. And having a low tax bill was helpful, but having a market that could use your product or your service, in this case, was more important than just the taxation level. If it was just taxation, we'd all go to North Dakota. North Dakota would be the most business-friendly place in the country. It is not, because while North Dakota has extremely low taxes, it has other factors that make it not as attractive for business relocation. So I think what we're talking about here is using a dollop of common sense and to try to identify those strategies that fit what will work, not just what appeals to somebody's ideology. I sort of alluded to this before. This is something that my dad told me. My dad was a working man. He was a maintenance man, headed maintenance. And when I asked him why he moved from Brooklyn to Westchester County, I've oft told this story, he looked at me sort of the way that Dirty Harry used to look at his superior officers, with a sense of disdain and how could you ask me such a stupid question, son? He said two reasons. Number one, meaning Westchester versus Brooklyn, Westchester is near New York, meaning New York City. Number two, it's not New York City. And in that simple explanation is what Westchester's attraction is. We are next to the most vibrant city in the world, certainly the most vibrant city in the hemisphere. At the same time, we have different attributes than that city does. We have a different quality of life. We have a different layout of topography, and we have a certain amount of physical beauty. We have spaciousness. The home structures are different here than working in the city. Some people want to be there. Some people want to be here. And for the people that want to be here, we want to try to make it attractive to them. And that's what I think Bridget's strategy is. And I am not looking for short-term gain. I'm not saying by November this will happen. By a year from November this will happen. This is the long haul, and it will take time to build relationships. And that's something I learned in my business career, and Ken's had a very robust business career as well. It's the same thing. You work for the long-term health of what you're doing. And if it turns out that in 10 years someone else is standing here and he or she is the one that cuts the ribbon, great. To know that we started in the right direction, or we amplify, because we didn't begin these things. These were things done under prior administrations as well in different ways, and we're codifying it in a different fashion. But we think it's very important for you to understand that there's COVID out there and it has affected everything we've done. But we have not stopped all of the different activities that we're doing. We're trying to work on a host of different areas. Economic development is one of them. So, Bridget, thank you very much for being with us to cover all of that. I'm going to close out. I'm going to let Bridget get back to what she's doing. I'm going to close out the report today with another area which is a matter of respect, and that is to recognize that the month of March is American Red Cross Month. And this is when the Red Cross honors the more than 300,000 people that volunteer to make its life-saving mission possible. For nearly 80 years, presidents of the United States have proclaimed March as Red Cross Month, and now we're bringing some of our Red Cross volunteer executives in because we're going to give them some recognition in a second. And the work of the Red Cross has been phenomenal, donating blood or platelets, volunteering to help people who are impacted by a disaster. An apartment building has a fire. There's 12 people that are displaced, 12 families that are displaced, and then we'll be happy to do that to be helpful to them. This is what the Red Cross does. First aid, CPR, class training, all of those things are things that are done by the American Red Cross. And here in the Westchester and Fairfield County area, we have a Red Cross chapter that has really been robust and for a long period of time. I just gave you a statistic that 80 years of presidents announcing that March is Red Cross Month. I want to go back 55 years. That's almost 80 years, not quite. 55 years ago, actually slightly more than that, 1965, I was a 7th grade student at Washington Junior High School, which is no longer a junior middle school. It's a high school in the city of Mount Vernon. And we had a teacher, mathematics teacher, Mrs. Rayella Healy. I want to give her credit. She's long passed, but let her name be mentioned one more time out in the public domain. She headed in the junior high school that I was in, the American Red Cross Club, and they tried to sign up young people to come to do volunteer work as part of the American Red Cross program, and myself and a couple of my friends volunteered to do it. There were reasons why we did it, not all altruistic, but the social world of these 7th and 8th graders often revolve around boys being with girls. That was good enough. That got us to volunteer. And we came to the location, which is at 106 North Broadway in White Plains, not far from where I am, 55 years ago. And through all of those years, volunteers have come to do good work for the American Red Cross. So today we want to recognize that. We have a proclamation which says a lot of really nice things. And since I don't have glasses with me, I'm going to trust that Stephanie Dunn-Ashley, who is our Chief Executive Officer Service for the Greenwich, West Point, Westchester, and Rockland County areas. That's a lot of turf, Stephanie. Yeah. That we present this to her from a grateful county, thanking you for all the good work that you've done. And please accept it with our good wishes. Share some of your thoughts, and do introduce your colleagues who are here, including Mr. Mooney, who's a longtime friend. Stephanie Dunn-Ashley.
Absolutely. Thank you, County Executive. I'm going to just slide that down there. So I do want to introduce my colleagues. With me today, I've got 2 board members, Bill Mooney and Lissa Sheely, and I have another colleague from Volunteer Services, Andrew Sindel. So there's a couple more outside too, but they're a little camera shy. I did want to thank the county exec. Thank you for acknowledging Red Cross Month. And as he said, since 1943, Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared March to be Red Cross Month. So we're thrilled to be here today to thank our volunteers, to thank all of the time and effort and energy and resources that all of those volunteers put into each and every day responding for the Red Cross. 90% of our workforce base is volunteers. So that is a huge, huge number of people. And today we also want to especially thank the women in the workforce because it's International Women's Day. For some of you who may not know, services that the Red Cross provides are serving hundreds of military families each day, locally and worldwide. We provide over 40% of the nation's blood supply, as County Exec was saying, everything from whole blood to plasma, platelets, and all of that. We teach millions of life-saving skills each and every day to children, adults, and teens through first aid, CPR, AED training, home fire safety, lifeguarding, the babysitting course, and more. Through online and in-person training, we have provided these programs throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are doing them in a safe and obviously COVID-safe way. Some of the projects that we have done, that we are doing, looking forward to do coming forward are our home fire and safety Sound the Alarm campaign coming up in April, where we will be empowering hundreds of community residents to be prepared for the unlikely event of a home fire in their home. This past year, we have provided over 600 residents at 85 disasters in the county of Westchester with services by the Red Cross. We have onboarded 275 volunteers, 125 of them are children. And every day we respond to 10 to 12 disasters. And our largest locally was just as recently as January 6th, where we provided over 100 residents 10 days worth of sheltering, meals, water, mental health, and support at a fire that took place in Yonkers. So today I thank George Latimer, County Executive, all of my board members and all of the staff, and especially all of the volunteers at the Red Cross. Thank you for joining us on Red Cross Month and for the proclamation for the Metro New York North chapter.
Very good.
Thank you.
Congratulations. We thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks very much again. Stephanie, we'll give you a warm elbow. I guess that's the way we do it. this
Warm
time.
elbow.
Bill, it's always like Thank you. Thank you very much. The American Red Cross, our local branch that covers Westchester and some other areas, for their hard work. And unfortunately, the next time we have a disaster, we'll see them right there helping us out. But thank you very much for that. So we're going to move to questions. We'll ask Catherine Chaffee, our Director of Communications, if there are any questions from the press.
Yes, you've already answered Samantha Crawford's, but we do have one outstanding from David. David from the Journal News. He asks if Johnson & Johnson's vaccine will be available at the county center anytime soon.
David Proper from the Journal News, Lowhud, asks about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at the county center. We think that the county center is going to continue to use the Pfizer virus, that's Pfizer vaccine, pardon me, the Pfizer vaccine at that location. The Johnson & Johnson vaccines that are coming in will be used in other locations. And as I alluded to, David, in settings where we think the one-shot scenario makes it much easier for us to handle logistics. I mean, the logistics of one shot is better everywhere, but as I mentioned specifically, homebound seniors, it makes it easier. When we do a pop-up situation, we don't have to recreate the pop-up. Where you have a permanent facility that quasi-permanent, we hope this all does go away, but where you have facilities like the county center or the Westchester Health Clinic downtown here in White Plains, or for that matter, the center that has been set up down at the Armory in Yonkers, those are facilities that we expect are going to be issuing vaccinations for a long period of time. So there, it's a lot easier to handle the two-shot type of vaccinations than it would be in the pop-up scenarios as we're doing in northern Westchester, New Rochelle, and other places. That's where we want to target the Johnson & Johnson. So it's easier to do one shot, it pops up, you get the vaccine, and then you don't need the second follow-up shot. So that's the logic behind it. And so therefore, the state could always change strategies and decide something different. And that might have to do with something about how much quantity of doses are available in the future. But for right now, the way it looks, the J&J will be used in some settings, and the Pfizer will be used currently at the county center, as was asked by David. We also had a question from Samantha Crawford from News 12. We want to thank her as well for her coverage of these things. I gather we answered it somewhere along the way. So they say even a blind squirrel finds a nut in the forest every so often. So I stumbled across an answer despite whatever the circumstance. Are there any other questions? If there are anyone else from the press, any of our friends in the press, or people who are not our friends in the press, you're welcome to direct any questions to Catherine Chaffee, our Director of Communications, 995-2932. We'll do our best to answer them. Our plan is to be back with you again on Thursday, 2 o'clock, for the next update. We'll obviously go over numbers and whatever is relevant at that time. We're going to look to see if one of our municipal partners will be able to join us to talk about their community and what's happening there. If for any reason between now and then we have reason to report back any particular breaking bit of news, we'll do so. But for the meantime, we appreciate you watching. We ask you to stay safe and take good care. We'll see you on Thursday at 2 o'clock. I'm George Latimer. Have a good day.